because I ran out of time yesterday with sharks. So, we're looking at class Osteichthyes. I should be standing over here, but my mouse failed yesterday. We're looking at class Osteichthyes, and so chondrichthyes was yesterday. Chondro means like cartilage, and osteo means bone. So the differences between chondrichthyes and osteichthyes is cartilaginous fish or bony fish. So bony fish today. Here, fishy, fishy, fishy. What makes a bony fish a bony fish? Well, it's got bones, okay? But beyond that, they are very similar to chondrichthyes in many ways. They have 4 appendages. So they have pectoral fins and pelvic fins, and they have gills in arches that are paired. There's different numbers of gill arches in different orders of Osteichthyes. Sharks, almost all of them have 5, and then there's that one group that has strange sharks with 6 or 7. The number of gill arches in fish is much more varied in bony fish. Also, chondrichthyes has jaws that are not fused to the skull. And in a couple of the orders, we talked about the fact that they're actually very loosely held and the jaws kind of wiggle around. For fish, not true. Jaws are fused to the skull. So if you dissected a fish, and you would find that its jaws and its skull are all one object. Also, the teeth, if they exist, are rooted. The teeth go down through the gum and up into the jaw and join to the jaw, just like your teeth do. If you've been to the dentist and they've had to pull out teeth, there are roots to your teeth that go down through the gum and into the bone. That is the way it is here. Remember we talked about with sharks, the teeth can just kind of be shed. They can come out of the gum fairly simply. These guys also have a swim bladder or a lung, and that's going to go ding in your head, and you're going to say, wait, lungs? I thought fish breathed water. Yes, they do. But there are some orders of fish that actually have lungs. And while they also all have gills, there are some fish that can either take oxygen out of the water, or if they choose to, go up to the surface, open their mouth, and take a breath. And they can get oxygen both ways. And we'll talk about some of those very, very cool fish later on. The ones that don't have a lung have a swim bladder, which is a gas-filled bag in the middle of the fish. Now, we're in a military community. There are military brats among us here. How does a submarine change its altitude in the water, change its depth? Do you guys know? What does a submarine do to make itself float more or sink more? Yeah, it has tanks that it either fills with air or with water. And when the submarine fills it with water, the submarine becomes negatively buoyant and it goes down. If the submarine fills the tanks with air, it becomes positively buoyant and it goes up. That's how a submarine determines its height in the water. Fish, they got that idea, by the way, from fish. So swim bladders are gas-filled bags in the fish. And the fish can take gases that are dissolved in the ocean that it absorbs through its gills, and it can squirt those gases or condense those gases into the swim bladder. And the swim bladder gets more or less full of air. And that makes the fish more or less buoyant. So fish that live down in the bottom of the ocean have very small swim bladders, and so there's very little of them that is air. Fish that live high in the water column have larger swim bladders, and there's more of them that is air. And that's why dead fish tend to float, because the gases in the fish's body, as they start to decompose, there's gases released by the decomposition, and more gases fill up the body of the fish, and the fish becomes buoyant and pops to the surface. So this is a buoyancy control device, and in some fish, that gas bag has an opening to the mouth and can actually be used for gas exchange. It's pretty cool. They have bony, pectoral, and pelvic girdles. So a shark skeleton, if you were to look at what is attaching the pectoral and pelvic fins to the rest of the animal. There isn't a shoulder or hips in a shark. The appendages down there are only there. They don't anchor with skeletal matter back to the spinal column. But for bony fish, they do. The pelvic fins and the pectoral fins have bones supporting them, which is why fish can move their fins a lot better than sharks can. Sharks will swim through the water with their tail, and they'll like pitch and tip their pelvic and pectoral fins to steer them. But you never see a shark go like this. They can't. They don't have the bones and the anchoring of muscles to make their fins go like this. But you totally see fish go like this, right? Because they have machinery behind under their skin that holds the fins and gives the fins the ability to be much more mobile. Okay, global reach. They are everywhere that there's wetness. Every ocean and nearly every river or lake has bony fish. They are truly global. There are even bony fish way up high in Arctic lakes and things that are frozen for much of the year. There are fish that figure out how to live there. So they're all over the place. There's fish in lakes that dry up in the summer and there's no water at all in the lake. There are fish that burrow down in the mud and survive and wait for the rains to fill the lake back up, and then they pop back up out of the mud. It's crazy. Fish are cool. So we're going to look at some cool fish. Here's your basic fish. This is a perch, and we may dissect one. I just got an email from our cat supplier that the cats are going to be back ordered, and I'm angry. So I may have to push the cats further and stick another dissection there. We may dissect a fish. We've never dissected a fish in biology here before, but we may do it. This is a perch, and you can see pelvic and pectoral fins. These are the homologous structures to your forelimbs and your hind limbs, right? Then there's usually one fin behind the anus, and it's called the anal fin. And then there's at least one, sometimes two dorsal fins. And then there's a tail fin, the caudal fin. This bony thing that covers the gills is an operculum. So these are just some terms that we'll be talking about as we talk about fish. Fish come in all different sizes and shapes, and man, there's all kinds of them. From your plecostomus that you may have in your aquarium to some long, skinny things like gars and pikes, some pacu and barracuda. There's all different kind of diverse shapes, and their skeletons are sometimes very cool to look at. But just looking at this guy, you can see that his teeth are rooted into the jaw, and that the jaw is fused to the skull. So that's some things that are not true about sharks. Is that a question or just a question? Okay, cool. No problem. If you look at a fish skeleton, here you will see the pectoral fins and the bones underneath them that anchors it to the rest of the skeleton, and the pelvic fins and the bones underneath it that anchors it to the rest of the skeleton. And all of their fins usually have some kind of extension from the ribs so that they're anchored to the skeleton and they can be moved in intelligent ways. So let's get through these orders. 8 orders that I will take you through. There are many, many, many more than that, but these are the 8 that I picked. Perciformes, Percy, not Percy Jackson. This is not a demigod. Sorry, we don't believe in those anyway. Perciformes are normal fish. This is the one that like your basic fish is in. The defining characteristic of Perciformes is that it has dorsal and anal fins, and usually they're fairly mirrored, that an anal fin is about the same size and shape as the dorsal fin. So the fish it has the caudal fin behind that it wiggles to go through the water, and then it has an anal fin and a dorsal fin that look like they're friends, they're twins in some way. The background fish here, this fish that is serving as the background of the lecture is Perciformes. You can see that the anal fin and the dorsal fin look like they are a matched pair. Okay, so that's kind of the normal fish. These guys are all over the place in the oceans. Lots and lots and lots of species of fish. Gasterostiformes. There you go. Gasterostiformes. That means stomach bones. That's a weird name. Stomach bone shapes. And when I start to show you pictures in a minute, you'll know why they named pipefish and seahorses stomach bones. Because if you look at a seahorse or a pipefish, they look like they've got bones poking out all over the place. They're all bumpy and ridgy and like sharp angles. So they named these things stomach bone fish. Gasterostiformes. These guys are really cool. Seahorses are sometimes everybody's favorite thing to see in an aquarium. They're pretty. They behave strange. They've got neat faces. They've got little tiny fins that they flap really fast. And pipefish are like if you take a seahorse and you straighten him out and you make him a tube. That's a pipefish. Very similar to a seahorse, but he's not S-shaped. He's pipe. And these guys are really kind of fun. I've been diving where there were lots of pipefish, and they will use you as a stalking blind to hunt. So I'm a lot bigger than a pipefish. Pipefish are usually pretty small. And so they will swim behind a human who's snorkeling or scuba diving, and they'll see a fish over there that they want to eat, but the little fish, they don't want the little fish to see them. So they'll swim behind you and like hide behind you and then dart around you and eat and get the little fish that didn't know that they were there. And then, of course, you're the scuba diver. You don't have eyes in the back of your head. You don't know there's a pipefish back there. So you're swimming along, and he's stalking behind you, and all of a sudden this fish goes around your head and eats something right in front of you. And you're like, whoa, hello, how are you? So it's happened to me a couple of times. They're neat. Tetradontiformes. Tetra means what? 3. No. One more. Add 1 to that number. 4. Oh, Donty. What part of the body does daunt refer to?
Don't.
Teeth. You go to an orthodontist, right? Orthodonture. Tetradontiformes are pufferfish. How many teeth do you think a pufferfish has?
2. 4.
4 teeth. That's what the word means, right?
Wow.
4 teeth. Oh, Tetradontiformes. Okay. And then there's catfish, which are cool critters. Catfish come, little small ones, the little dory catfish that you can get in your aquariums, to like, I'll show you some huge Mac Daddy catfish that are bigger than me.
Yep.
And they're really cool. They've got the tentacles off the bottom of the jaw, right? Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Some fried Cajun spiced catfish with some okra and some stewed greens on the side. I'm done. I'm going to go eat right now. Oh, so good. Anyway. And then there's scorpion fish, scorpioniforms. And these guys are called scorpion fish not because they have stingers in their tails, but actually their dorsal fin spines that stick up along the back of them all have venom sacs in the bottom. So if you step on them, or if a predator tries to bite them, it is a nasty sting, and some of them can be fatal. Some of them will kill you if you step on or squish or grab this fish. So they're called scorpion fish for a good reason. They don't have stingers that go out of their tail, but it's totally defensive. Let's all do it together. But they're totally defensive if they get, if a predator closes his mouth around it, the inside of his mouth is going to get stung. If another fish tries to, whack it or disturb it in some way, it's ugly. And then there's batfish and toadfish, batrachoidiforms. That's a fun one to say. Toadfish look really ugly, but they're so ugly they're cute.
Is it like blobfishes?
Similar. So let's look at some pictures. These are the regular Perciformes fish. Discus are really, really cool to have in aquariums. But in all of these, you should see anal fin and dorsal fin that look like they're mirrors, right? They're all the same kind of shape. This is a cichlid. This is a bass. This is a discus. And the Perciformes, you can see, have this mirrored anal fin, dorsal fin. These are pipefish. They're so cool. It's like I said, it's like a straightened out seahorse. And they come in all different colors, and I could spend all day showing you
That's a
these.
seahorse?
Whoa.
That's a pipefish.
Oh.
And so, yeah. So his eyes here, his mouth is here, but he'll float through the water. He doesn't swim really aggressively. He'll kind of just float around, and he looks like a floating piece of kelp. And so small fish like to hide in floating pieces of kelp as like a place to stay away from predators. So they see this guy drifting through the water, and they're like, "Oh, I can go hide there." And they swim right next to him. And he's like, "No, dinner, look," you know. And so he intentionally looks like a piece of kelp, so that little fish want to come be near him, and then he will eat them. This is another example of a pipefish that's doing a great job looking like a piece of algae. Isn't that incredible?
Really cool.
Praise God. God not only made algae, but he made fish to look like they're algae. It's pretty cool. Here's, of course, our friends, the seahorse. They come in all kinds of colors. Now, in this guy, you can see really clearly why they call them stomach bones, right? Look, all through the abdomen, you see these ridges. So that's where this order got its name, stomach bones.
The right one's really cool.
Yeah. They come in all different colors. This is what's called a sea dragon. It's like a seahorse that swims across the way. But he totally looks like a piece of kelp.
Yeah.
Totally looks like a piece of kelp. And that's not kelp that he's stuck on him. That's the way his fins grow. So God is such an artist. I think it's amazing. This is another sea dragon.
With eggs?
And with eggs, yeah. And the males carry the eggs in this group of fish. So this is a male. The female laid her eggs actually on him, and then he spread sperm across the top of it. And so they're all just incubating there and developing, and they'll hatch right off of him. So it's kind of cool. Okay, a couple more. These are, oops, oh, I missed one. These are puffers. And they've got the 4 teeth, 2 in there, 2 in the top. You can't see in the upper lip. But puffers are really cool. I think they're neat. This is a porcupine fish. When he gets scared, he looks really scary. They come in all different shapes and sizes. Again, there's some huge puffers that you can see down in Waikiki. So yeah, there's different colors. They're beautiful. Beautiful fish. This is a catfish. They come in all different sizes too. Small little tiny ones you can keep in your aquarium and they'll eat the algae, to really, really big ones. Has anybody ever heard of noodling?
Wow.
It's like you swim.
That's a huge catfish. Has anybody ever heard of noodling?
Is it like in the mud?
Yeah. What's noodling?
Where you like, I don't know.
You can't see through the water, but you know there are huge catfish there.
You go underneath.
So the smart people put on big gloves. Dumb rednecks don't.
Yeah.
And you just kind of lay through the mud and find holes that the catfish are living in, and you stick your hand down there, and they bite your hand because you're sticking it in their face. And then you grab their gill arch from inside their mouth, and you pull the catfish out of his hole.
Yeah, I've heard.
Meanwhile, it's biting your hand. And they sell big, tall Kevlar gloves so that they don't actually break the skin. But even so, it's going to hurt. They're strong. But I'll show you some pictures in a minute of dumb rednecks doing it with no gloves, and potentially really hurting themselves. So these are some smaller freshwater catfish. And then here's dumb rednecks noodling. So you just kind of stick your hand down around to try to find holes that catfish are living in. And when they bite you, you grab their gills and pull them out of the water. So this is Big Bud. I don't know what his name actually is, but man, that's going to be some good eating. But it hurts to get your good eating. These are scorpion fish. So you can see the strong spines up here. All of these spines end in a venom sac. And if they get pushed down on, then they pump venom through the spine. And
You
so,
look like a shell. It looks like a shark.
yeah, you can see him really clearly because he's been lifted out of his environment and put on a blue background. But in truth, these guys, their camouflage is astounding.
Like that.
So he blends in really well with the rocks, and he's an ambush predator. So he'll just lay there and wait for something to swim by his face. And He just takes a bite. But because he's laying there on a rock, he wants to be defended against other things stepping on him.
Oh wow. Oh wow. Yeah.
Isn't that incredible? God is just such an artist.
Maybe she.
Yeah.
I don't like the toadfish.
That's a toadfish.
What?
That's a toadfish. They're so ugly. They're cute. I
Not
think.
that cute. That's
What?
all good. Okay, no, that.
Not
Okay,
again.
kind of cute.
That's-
And then cute.
It looks really
mad.
bad.
Aren't they cool? Toadfish. I
It
know.
looks like it's like
Who are you talking to, sucker? Okay. The last two orders I'm going to take you through are eels and morays, and then the most populous type of fish in the ocean, just the silverfish or the bait fish. Anguilliformes are eels and morays, and these are fish that have been, turned into strings, where they still have all their fins. Eels don't lack fins, but all the fins are separated from each other by large expanses of just tubular body, long fuselages, right? So eels and morays, they're not snakes. There are some people who think that eels are snakes. There are marine snakes, sea snakes. You do not want to be around them. They're related to the cobra. They will kill you before you can swim to shore. Yeah, they live in tropical waters. I don't think we have any here.
We should.
We have tropical water, but I just don't think they've ever been introduced to this area. But central Mexico, sometimes they make their way up to the very southern parts of California, but usually not. So I've been diving in Mexico. I have seen them. Thankfully, they didn't care that I was there, but I saw them swimming past me. I was like, yeah, peace. How you doing? You just keep going on with your bad self. But that's not these guys. These are fish that look like snakes. And then the most common kind of fish out there are just bait fish, silverfish that usually have upturned eyes and upturned mouths, and they look like they're always swimming around going like this because they're trying to figure out what's above them that they can eat. Herrings and anchovies are just two of the many examples of these. I love herring. Has anybody eaten herring? It's a Dutch thing, Northern European thing. But when the herrings spawn in Northern Europe, people catch them by the truckloads, and you serve them smoked over buttered bread with some onions cut across the top. Oh, praise the Lord for herring. It's beautiful. I'm getting hungry.
It does make me
almost
happy.
like
Here's just pictures of some basic eels. Dutch people eat eels a lot too. So does sushi quite commonly. These are garden eels. These are eels that bury their tails in the sand and then float around with their heads and look for things to float by them that they can eat.
They look like seagulls.
Yeah, they do, but they're eels. This is, of course, a moray.
Why is those lightning?
I don't know, but I thought it was a neat picture, so I put it in. This is a moray. Moray eels look really terrifying, and their bite can hurt, but usually
They don't have
they don't care. They're looking for small fish. Here's a pretty fella.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like
Yeah,
so yellow.
I like those guys. I think they're neat. And then here's the electric ray. The electric eel.
Oh, you
Torpedo
you
eel.
don't want to touch that bad.
No, you don't want to be around him.
He's gonna kill you.
Very much like the electric torpedo ray. These guys have the same sort of electrochemical organ in them. And then, of course, silverfish. Man, they're everywhere. They come in all different sizes. Some of them are really small. Some of them are actually quite good size. But very seldom do people go after them as the main thing they're going for. This is a school of silverfish.
Wow.
So there you go.
Do we take
Some
this?
OWG whiz facts. Don't worry about writing these down. Just be amazed. Okay. The largest bony fish in the world is the ocean sunfish, or the mola. Anybody ever seen them?
I might have.
I'm not
I guess.
They're here. You've never seen them?
I might have. I just need to see a picture.
Oh, they're cool. The largest individual mola ever caught is 14 feet tall, and you'll see why we use tall and not long. They're very big dorsal and anal fins that they swim with. But the largest one was 14 feet tall, and it weighed 5,000 pounds.
Yikes.
That's a lot of fish. That's a lot of fish.
Heavier than me?
Another cool thing that there's these things called lungfish that can breathe air. I'll show you how they work in a minute.
Nice creative name.
Huh? Lungfish?
Creative name.
Yeah. Mud skippers.
Oh, yeah.
So if you go underwater, you have to hold your breath. when a mud skipper walks from lake to lake, he has to hold his water.
What?
So he takes a big mouthful of water and traps it in his gills. And then he keeps the water around his gills so his gills can get the oxygen out of it. And his pectoral and pelvic fins are quite rigid. And he walks
Wait, that's how
from
you
one
walk?
lake, from one lake to the other with a gill full of water.
Hilarious.
Crazy stuff. I'll show you some pictures. The smallest fish in the world is the dwarf pygmy goby, less than 15 millimeters as an adult, 1.5 centimeters.
He's one small one.
The fastest fish in the world is the sailfish, can get to 68 miles per hour
Oh,
That's
in the water.
Wow.
That's crazy fast. The fastest shark was the short fin mako that we have here. Gets up to 60, so the sailfish can leave that behind. And then damselfish. These guys can change gender. They're all born female. Every baby's a female. And then the most dominant members of a school of fish become male.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
something wrong here.
yeah, it's kind of interesting, huh? So let me show you some pictures. Oh, okay. So here's a mola.
Oh, I see that.
This is not the biggest individual ever, because you can see he's probably 6 feet or so, just looking at the person next to him. But they get very, very, very large. They're totally gentle. This person is not in danger of being eaten right now. But they're just huge, happy fish.
They have no back tail.
They do. It's just very, very, very small. But he swims with a dorsal and an anal fin. And so it's an interesting fish. Here's another one.
Oh. I thought the tail was like behind or something.
No.
It looks like it got cut off. Like.
No. They're cool. They're cool looking fish.
Cool.
This is an African lungfish. So he's swimming around in the water right now, and he's using gills. He's got gills. Matter of fact, they're external. Here's the gills. But he also has a lung. And so in the summer, the lake dries up, and he will dig a hole in the mud and hide in. And the water is trapped in this hole, and he will live in this little puddle in the mud, and he'll stick his mouth out and breathe air for an entire summer.
Wow.
Until he like hibernates ish, until the rains come and the ground above him gets soft again and it's full and it becomes a lake again. Then he'll push his way out and swim around the lake.
Cool.
Crazy fish, crazy fish. This is a mud skipper.
Is that a deal?
That's a fish. No, it's a fish, and his pectoral and pelvic fins are rigid enough that he can walk with them. And he's holding a bunch of water in his gills. And he's just looking around like, do I want to be here or do I want to go somewhere else? They are actually kind of, I don't know, they're interesting to look at. And so
Oh my gosh.
they're leaving one pond and going to another. This is that dwarf pygmy goby, the smallest fish in the world. And when you look at him this way, you're like, oh, how small really is that? It's pretty small. It's that small.
What?
Whoa.
Here's one across the thumbnail of a person. And these aren't babies. That's an adult fish. As big across as your thumbnail.
Wow.
Here's the fastest fish in the world. These anchovies have no prayer. The sailfish are herding them into a nice ball, and then they'll dive through the ball with their mouths open and catch what they can. So yeah, it's a cool little. Yeah, it does. They look like pirate ships. Very, very fast things. So focus species. Go ahead and write some of this down. Not all of it. Some of this down. I'm going to take you through my favorite fish. This is my favorite fish, partly because I love eating them.
Good to know.
They're cool, they're neat, and they're phenomenally good. Man, let me tell you, you take a fillet of sheep's head, wrap it in some foil with a half of an orange and some butter, put it next to a campfire. Oh, forget about it. It's so good. Oh, okay, so these guys have huge teeth, and they look like human teeth. I'll show you a picture in a minute. They have the incisors, they have the canines, they have the molars. But the difference is they have 3 rows of those. So you have one set of incisors, canines, and molars. They have that set, and then inside they've got another set, and then inside they've got another set. They have 3 rings of teeth in the top and the bottom. So if you get bit by one of these guys, you'll know. Like, there's a lot of teeth there. And they're built just like human teeth. A lot of fish teeth are kind of simple structures. But sheep's head teeth totally look like just slightly smaller human teeth. Dentin over bone, enamel over dentin. All of them are born female. Everyone is female. And then they'll live in an area, not really schooling, but they'll live in an area, and within the area they'll compete for dominance. And the most dominant females go through a transition and become male. And when they become male, their gonads transform. So what used to be ovaries become testes. So weird. They used to make one kind of gamete, now they decide to just churn out something else. We're going to retool. We're going to make sperm now. They get 50% bigger, so the males are half again as big as the females. They change their color. The females usually tend to be kind of a pastel shade of whatever color, a pastel pink, a pastel green, a pastel blue. But the males will get much, much darker with that color, and then usually that color gets darker in the middle, and then the head and the tail region will become black.
Ooh.
So this picture that my movie is over is kind of covering it, which you'll see more later. And then they get a big knob on their forehead. And that's not because they're smarter, but it's because the males compete for females by ramming into each other like sheep. Oh, that's why they're called sheepheads, right? So they will run into each other and butt heads until one of them kind of gets knocked out or disoriented. And then the one that's still with it gets to go get the ladies, right? So so they get this big weapon on their forehead. They're kind of cool. And did I already say they're good to eat? Oh my goodness, they're good to eat. So this is a pair of females.
It looks like they're doing it.
And they're establishing dominance, because remember, the most dominant females get to become males. So these two females are like duking it out for who's going to be the more dominant female. And then I'm going to move my picture so you can see this. This is a male sheep's head, and where the females are kind of a pastel color, the males get much more intense, and then the head and the tail get black. They grow the big knob, they get bigger, and they are. Did I already say they're good eating? Oh man, I'm hungry. Okay, this is what their mouth looks like. So
That looks too human.
isn't that weird?
That's too human.
Yeah, it looks totally human. Incisors, canines, and molars, but 3 rows of teeth. So they're kind of cool looking. They're neat. Getting into dominion and design. There are so many different body plans in fish that when evolutionists look at how did this kind of fish come from this kind of fish, you can draw made-up pictures, but if you look at the actual fossil record, there aren't transitionary species between the different kinds of fish. And so Stephen Jay Gould, committed evolutionist, wrote all kinds of books and textbooks on evolution. He did believe in some kind of God, but certainly he would not have agreed with us about who God was. But Stephen Jay Gould wrote in a book called in a journal called Evolution Now, he wrote this, and I thought it was important to present to you. He says, the absence of fossil evidence for intermediary stages between major transitions in organic design. So he's saying we don't have these fossils. There are not transitionary fossils. Indeed, our inability, even in our imagination, to construct functional intermediates. In other words, I can't even imagine what a transitionary fish between this kind and this kind would look like. In many cases, has been a persistent and nagging problem for gradualistic accounts of evolution. So I thought it was just incredibly honest. He believed in transitional evolution, but he says, I can't. It's not there. I can't see it. I can't see it. But he'll write books about evolution, even though he can't see it. I thought that was great. Why not then say it's not true? Dominion and design, caudal fin and lifestyle. This is so cool. If God wants to make a fish that is like a Ferrari, that just takes off like the sailfin, and God wants to make a fish that is a ambush gulper, like the scorpion fish, who just lays there all day and waits for food to swim by, you don't need the same kind of tail. The ambush gulper needs to go from 0 to 60 incredibly fast because he needs to go from sitting still to, right? And then, I got my food. But he doesn't have to be fast for very long. He just needs to be able to burst forward and get his food and then settle back down, right? Whereas the sailfin needs to be able to haul fin for a long ways. And so all kinds of different lifestyles need all kinds of different fins. And I think it's so cool to look at the fins of fish and realize that God designed all of their fins for a unique lifestyle and a unique pattern. And so it's not that one fish wanted to go faster, so it made a taller, skinnier tail with a narrow peduncle. No, God made fast fish with a tall, narrow fin and a small peduncle. And so these things they're dripping with evidence of design. God made fish to do certain things. There's two different views to this. One is that they evolved different designs accidentally to fit into different lifestyles, or that God specifically equipped each kind of fish for the lifestyle He designed it to have. And I think that makes so much more sense. So think about, well, I'm going to show you some pictures of tails and all the different lifestyles that these tails allow the fish to have. It's very cool. So there's all different kinds of tails. There's a pointed tail. There's a naked tail, where there actually is no caudal fin, but the body itself comes to a point. There's a pointed body, and the dorsal just wraps around the back and becomes the anal. This is like what eels have. There's a rounded fin. There's an uneven rounded fin. There's a truncated flat square fin. There's a truncated emarginate tail. There's a deeply emarginate tail where it like dips in the middle. There's a double emarginate tail where it dips back and forth a whole bunch. There's a slightly forked, an unevenly forked, a deeply forked, and there's a lunate where it's basically like a crescent moon. And all of these tails, physicists can study, and they'll tell you that if you want to lurch forward, you want a particular kind of tail. You want something like this. But if you're going to swim for a long period of time, it's better to have a dip in the middle of your tail. And if you're going to swim fast for a long time, you need this kind of tail. And we can analyze the physics of it and arrive to the conclusion that what this fish does with its tail, it was perfectly designed to do with its tail. And that isn't by mistake. That's a God who knows physics. Not only does he know physics, he wrote physics. So nobody is a better hydrodynamicist than him. I'm going to show you this. This is pretty cool.
Photographed 2,000 feet deep in the Pacific Ocean off the California coast, the Macropinna microstoma, known as the Barreleye fish, is small and dark with large fins, a tiny mouth, and unusual barrel eyes under a transparent dome. The two green spheres in the video are the lenses of its tubular eyes.
Those are eyes.
The eyes are enclosed within the transparent shield, sort of like the glass canopy of the jet fighter. Above the mouth, the two dark capsules that appear to be eyes actually contain the fish's olfactory organs, or the equivalent of nostrils. Typically, the barreleye sits quietly in the water, using its big fins for stability while it scans the water above for food. When it spots food, it can rotate its eyes to look forward, to include its mouth in the field of view. Scientists speculate that the barreleye steals food from siphonophores, elongated jellies with tentacles that capture prey that swims into them. They believe the barreleye swims into the tentacles and steals the food from the siphonophore. The shield over its eyes protects them from the stinging cells of the siphonophore's tentacles. The barreleye can also rotate its eyes to avoid predators. or avoid being captured by scientists.
Nope.
The fish discovered alive by the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute is the first specimen of its kind to be found with its soft, transparent dome intact. It had been known since 1939, but only from mangled specimens dragged to the surface by nets.
Isn't that cool? So he swims into jellyfish and steals their food. And you don't want your eyeballs to get stung by the jellyfish when you're swimming into the jellyfish to get its food. So God made a clear skull and a clear scalp that covers the eyeballs, so the eyeballs can look through the skull. That's just so cool. What can we do to continue to improve the human condition? People eat fish. I eat fish. I've talked about that a lot. You eat fish, I'm sure. And as more and more people are out there eating fish, fish populations shrink. Don't worry about writing this down. Just pay attention. We got just a few minutes. Fish populations are shrinking around the world. Fish is actually the most eaten protein in many parts of the world. In some parts of the world, the most eaten protein is pork. In other parts of the world, the most eaten protein is fish. And so we need to manage it like any other God-given resource. There's really three things we could do. One is to manage natural fisheries with careful counting and monitoring to make sure that we don't fish too many of that thing. Hawaii needs to get a lot better at that than what it is right now. People are overfishing all over the place around here. The other thing we can do is grow fish in farms. And some people grow fish in inland farms, and I'll show you some pictures of that. And then there's open ocean fish farming, which is pretty awesome. And I think that's totally the way to go. I'll show you some pictures of this. So fishing regulations, see these signs all over the place in other states, but they're not as common here. You want to make sure that you're not taking things out of the water that should be left to have babies. This is a fish farm. They're growing fish in these barrels, and when the fish are big enough to harvest, they just do. So they're not like returning them to the ocean. They're just growing them here, and when they're big enough to put on plates, they put them on plates. So this is a fish farm just like a cattle farm or a chicken farm. And you can do this anywhere. You don't have to be by the ocean. You can put that up anywhere you want to. This is another inland fish farm, a little bit lower tech, but it's working. This lady is growing, I don't know what that is, maybe snapper, but something in these big, huge bins, and they will put the baby fish in all at the same age, and the fish will just grow here until they're big enough to harvest, and then they'll harvest them and go feed people with it. So it doesn't need to be really high tech. This is an open ocean fishing farm where these barrels are just floating in the ocean, and they string them all together so they don't get lost, and they anchor it, and then they swim out here, come out on boats and feed the fish, and the fish just live in ocean water, and they can't be preyed upon. Other fish can't get to them to eat them, so they just grow there till they're big enough to feed to people. And some of these operations are huge, and there's fish just growing in these until they're the right size. So there you go. Now we're done. We can be responsible for the resources God has given us.
Can you
Okay.
exit real quick?
Yes.
I
Hold
just
on,
want to show her how to send me the link.
Okay.